Comments are a comment. YouTube doesn't care it's a negative comment. They go, oh, people are discussing this thing, push it out further.
A lot more companies need to outsource more things that they're not specialists in.
We have 3 million listeners, but only 30% of you are subscribed.
Hey, and welcome back to Podfathers, where this week we're going to be talking about formatting a video podcast and your series. Before we get going though, Tolu, we've got a little quickfire round that we've cutely named Get to Know Your Father. So you're going to ask me 10 questions, I'm going to ask you 10 questions. We've done this in other episodes as well, so you can watch back some of those. So do you want to get going, or shall I ask you first?
Okay. What's your favourite animal? No
surprise there, a monkey, because we're called Cheeky Monkey Videos for a reason. I love monkeys.
Why do you love monkeys?
They're just so fascinating to watch. And we called it Cheeky Monkey Videos purely because I used to call my kids cheeky monkeys, and I think most parents can relate. So yeah, it's called Cheeky Monkey Videos. So.
I did not know that.
Okay, there you go.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Comfort food? I love all food. Most food. Comfort food, I would say curry.
Spicy?
I like spicy food. Okay. Yeah, I love any spicy food.
Okay. Yeah. Coffee or tea?
I don't drink tea. It has to be black coffee. No sugar, no milk, nothing. Just pure black coffee.
Straight caffeine.
Straight caffeine, yeah. I don't drink that much of it. It's normally 1 cup a day. But yeah.
What's your favourite movie of all time?
Usual Suspects with Kevin Spacey.
Why?
I think the storyline is incredible. The ending is incredible.
Okay.
Have you watched it?
No.
Watch it.
Okay.
Tell me if you like it. Watch it.
If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
My honeymoon destination, Hawaii. So we went there for 3 weeks. I would happily go back again.
Would you ever live there?
No.
Ah, interesting.
I love where I am at the moment.
Okay.
We're in Wokingham, little countryside-y bit, but then we've got access to London and everything else. Yeah, Hawaii's great for a holiday. I can't imagine myself living anywhere else though. What's
your favourite sport to watch or play?
Probably to watch and play would be tennis. Great timing at the moment because it's Wimbledon.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that. I'm not watching it as much as I used to watch it, but yeah, I love playing tennis, and the weather this year has been pretty naff so far, to be honest, so I've not played as much as I'd like, but yeah.
Have you been to Wimbledon?
I went 15 years straight.
Wow.
And I stopped going during COVID because there was all that kerfuffle about going in, and then since then I don't think I've been back, which is really annoying because I just got really busy. But yeah, 15 years straight.
I want to go, so I've never been.
Incredible day out. Yeah. It's just superb. If you get the weather for it as well, the atmosphere, everything's amazing.
Do you prefer books or movies?
Ooh, I would say books before. I'm going to say audiobooks now.
Yeah.
I'm not a movie guy, to be honest. Books, I used to love reading books, but now it's got to be audiobooks. And podcasts.
Of course.
Obviously.
Of course. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Concert? Probably, it's a long time ago, Blink 182.
Oh.
Yeah, that's how old I am. Blink 182.
I love Blink. I used to love Blink 182.
And that was about 15 years ago.
Okay. What's your favourite season of the year?
Spring.
Okay.
I can deal with like up to 22 degrees, and anything more than that's way too hot for me.
Okay.
But I don't like the cold either.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl. I'd happily stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, sending emails in peace and quiet. Yeah. No distractions and getting on with it. But also, I don't mind getting up early-ish. So I can go to bed at 2, wake up at 7, I'm fine. I don't need that much sleep.
Awesome.
He says. I probably look like I need more sleep. So your set of questions then. What's your favourite way to spend a weekend?
I would say a mix between some kind of exercise, so maybe some basketball, or go out for a walk in like like Cliveden, like National Trust places.
I love Cliveden,
yeah. So we got married there, so that kind of place we like to go to.
You got married at Cliveden?
Yeah.
National Trust, amazing.
Yeah. So it was in COVID though, so it was only 30 people. So the price to people ratio was actually good, because otherwise, no. And then some church in there as well. So I go to church. So church on Sunday, and then some good food. So exercise, church, and food.
Okay, that leads on nicely to what's the weirdest food you've ever tried?
Probably some kind of like intestine or something. So like in Nigerian food, we've got this thing called shaki, which is also known as like tripe. Right. And that's not it. And they have like cow foot and all that kind of stuff. That's probably it.
It's not on a regular menu then?
No. It's not my vibe. But gizzard, which is like some kind of chicken innard, if they season it well, and that is beautiful.
I'm a man of habits. I won't be trying to do that. Nope. If you could have dinner with any famous person, dead or alive, who would it be?
That's a great question that I actually don't have an answer to.
You could have said me, but that's fine.
But we can do that anyway.
So there's no one on your list that you'd want to chat to?
I'd need to give it a proper think. I'm a data guy, right? So I need to like put it all in a spreadsheet.
Do the pros and cons.
Do the ranking,
analysis.
yeah.
We'll come back to you on that one. What's your favourite TV show to binge watch?
So I think I said last time, like, I don't really remember stuff. So if I think back to the shows that I remember watching, like, have you heard of Reacher?
I don't watch that much TV.
Okay.
So I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Reacher, he's like this massive army guy who goes around kicking butt. So that was cool. 24, I like binge watched 24.
There's about 300 episodes there, isn't there?
Yep. About a week of my life I spent watching 24. Prison Break was really good. Suits was really good. So like,
Love
there's
Suits.
loads. TV was my vibe.
Fair enough. Guilty pleasure TV then? Anything like that?
Oh, yes.
God, spill the beans. I spilt mine last time. So
90 Day Fiancé. Have you ever watched it?
I can imagine what it's like.
Oh my gosh, utter chaos. It's these people who are in like, the Philippines or like Russia or whatever who are trying to make it to America. And it's usually like a really attractive woman with like a very unattractive man. Or they get married for a visa. Or some of them are the other way around, like a 60-year-old woman from America with like a 35-year-old guy from Nigeria. Like, utter chaos. But wonderful chaos, and I watch it with my sisters.
That's my vibe. I'm putting that on my list.
Yeah, you'll love it.
Do you have any hidden talents?
I don't think so.
They're so hidden you don't even know about them.
Yeah, like I need to discover them. No, I don't think so.
No, I don't either. What's your favourite holiday and why?
As in the favourite one I've been on? Or my favourite type of holiday?
No, favourite holiday you've been on.
Oh, one of my friends lives in California. And like when we go there, like we play basketball on the beach, we chill out, we eat good food. That's probably my favourite holiday.
That's the theme of your life, isn't it? Play basketball, eat some food.
Yeah. Like, what more do I need?
What's one thing on your bucket list? Don't say basketball and food.
No, I've already done basketball and food. One thing on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I would love to rent like a massive, massive villa, get a bunch of my friends and family there, have like a chef and all that kind of stuff. But it'd be like a villa, has a nice view, just spend like a few days with people.
Nice, I like that. Surrounded by family.
Yeah.
Nice. What's your favourite hobby or pastime?
Probably not a surprise with that one. Do you know what, actually? Either like basketball or podcasting actually is one of my favourite things to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Cool. Do you prefer the beach or the mountains?
Oh, that's actually a tough one. Because
it was for me.
I do love the beach. I do love a sunset over the ocean. But the views from mountains are epic. But they're often really cold, so I'm going to go beach.
If you could instantly learn any skill, what would it be?
Trading.
Oh, that's
Trading.
good. I like that.
Make loads of money really easy, really quickly, and then do what I want with the rest of my life.
That's a good. I like that one. Yeah, my answer sucks to that compared to yours. Learn another language. I'd trade as well.
Trading.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the actual episode that everyone's joined us for.
Yeah.
But now you've got to know your father. So, we're going to be talking about formatting a video podcast episode and the series, the intricacies behind it. So let's start with what we generally start with. Prospects coming in, clients starting podcasts, is about the look, the feel, the theme, the consistency, and the branding. So talk to me about that.
This is one of the things that's really important, is that you can build like a visual and audio brand identity. So people can look at a thing and go, oh, okay, yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people don't realize just how important that is and how much actually goes into that. Like thinking about your colors, thinking about what's the feel that you want people to have? Is it soft? Is it like, mysterious? Like, what is it that you want? There's lots of different things to think about with that. And then your logos and your colors all fit into that. And it has to be really cohesive. It all has to come together really, really nicely. Like you don't want it really clashing unless that's your deliberate brand thing. So I think there's quite a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, and I think we've always said it to our clients as well. Treat it like your own TV show.
Yeah.
Graham Norton, or you even look at Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, or you look at Dragon's Den, they have a consistent theme. They have their branding there, they have their mood, their style, and every episode is exactly the same. You know what to expect. So treat your podcast in exactly the same way. And to achieve that doesn't cost that much money. Right. And we've talked about it in different episodes where, prompt cards, a couple of quid, doesn't cost a lot. Your lighting choices make a huge difference because are they consistent with your brand? Are they consistent with your podcast? Because you want that visual cue that every time someone tunes in, it's like, it's these guys again.
Yeah. And when I was doing my A-levels, I did media. And one of the things they talk about is called mise en scène, which is everything in the scene. So when you watch a movie, they're on set. So every single thing that's in the screen is deliberate. It's there for a reason. And you have to kind of treat it the same. So everything in there should be there for a reason. You don't want like a random book in there because like you want to be thinking about, okay, even the books that I put in there, do I want to, they call it Easter eggs.
Yeah.
So like, do you want to leave little things,
little
in
hidden
there?
surprises?
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things that I think are really important to think through in that level of detail of, okay, I'm going to have this set. What am I going to put in the set? Where am I going to put it? Why am I going to put it there? And once you've done that once and like, it makes a massive difference going forward.
So explain to me why they put the Starbucks cup in the Game of Thrones episode.
That wasn't an Easter egg. That was a big fat poo that someone laid.
But people still talk about it. So for me, it's amazing marketing.
Yeah.
It's all over the papers, everything. But I think for me, consistency and branding is just absolutely essential because it doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't take a huge amount of brain power to do either. So whether you're going to have an online Riverside chat podcast, you can still have a very consistent theme in terms of your background, your backdrop.
Yeah.
If you're in a studio environment, again, having the lighting choices, having the props, is crucial. Just a little bit of thinking power to go, that's how I want my frame to look. That's what I want my audiences to see. So 100%. Even the uniform we've got on, we did that as a bit of a laugh as well, didn't we? But it's a nice subtle touch. And I think all those little subtle touches do add up to make a huge difference.
We didn't do the trousers on purpose, but
today was an accident.
So when I in my studio at home, I've basically just got like an IKEA shelf, and it's got lots of little different bits. So like one of them is a mug that's got my name on it, and people ask about it, and actually that's the mug I got from my grad scheme at Sky, and on the other side it says Sky. So like I put stuff in there as well as connection points so that people can like ask questions. I've got a basketball with the Milwaukee Bucks, which is where I studied, and there's loads of stuff like that I've done in my home studio that makes connection as well.
Yeah, and it's important to you, and it's important to the theme and brand of your podcast as well.
Exactly.
But in a way, you can also customize that to the type of podcast. So those IKEA shelves are amazing. Yeah. Those Kallax units.
Yeah, the Kallax. Yeah, you already know.
We've got about 5 of them upstairs. But you can drag one of those in and instantly put an LED light around it with whatever color theme you have, and then personalize it with whatever books or props you want, and suddenly that is your podcast set. Yeah. That's cost you £50 in a Kallax shelf and a couple of props that you've probably got lying around anyway. Yeah, that LED light is my next upgrade for my Kallax. I don't have one yet. I thought you had a colour. No. I don't. I've got a. You got a little fluorescent light. That's it. But the actual ambient LED, that's my next upgrade. And again, even these ones make such a huge difference. Just having little pops of colour in the background, just visually appealing. So it's not a huge investment, but 100% is something that has to be done. And then we talk about obviously consistency, and I think we talked about it in a different episode as well, but in terms of durations of your episode, you obviously plan that in advance. It's fairly important. I'm going to ask you, it's fairly important to keep it fairly consistent for every episode, or does it not matter? I think it is quite important because your audience knows what to expect and you can kind of plan it. I think that it is a discipline to keep to that time. But it is important. Yeah, and again, that comes down to planning your episode properly, so you've hit your key messages, and you know roughly how long that will take. Even with a guest, if you prep them, say we're aiming for 40 to 45 minutes, they know what to expect, so they're not going to ramble on for an hour about their life story. And in terms of actually having that consistency, it also comes to things like the intro and the outro, your music for the intro as well. So every episode that you land on with Podfathers will be exactly the same. We have the same intro music that fades out, and then it's our discussion. And I think that's another thing that doesn't take a huge amount of time to think about, but it's just another little touch where people go, they're doing the same thing every time, and you're not having to use a lot of brain power. Everything is very consistent, and audiences love consistency. So anything else you'd want to add in terms of consistency and branding? Just having also a consistent schedule. So knowing that, it's every other week or every week on a Monday, whatever it is. So releasing and production. Because actually, if you've got a regular slot in terms of producing, so if you've got a guest podcast, for example, you know that every Tuesday you're going to be jumping on a call. It's got to be fairly flexible with your guests as well. But you have that frequency, and you know you're going to try and stick to that schedule. But also you have that schedule of when you're going to release. So you know that every other Thursday at 6 p.m. it gets released, because also your audience appreciate knowing that's when it's going to come out, rather than they'll release it when they release it, and they're trying to keep up. That's the worst. Again, treat it like a TV show. I always say the same thing. Go back to that. TV shows are regular slots. They're always 52 minutes or 48 minutes, whatever it is. They always stick to the same schedule. Treat your podcast in the same way, because TV's worked for the last 50 years. So do the same thing. Agreed. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the segments that you can have. Right? And I think if we go with the overview, you've got kind of your opening segment. You've got your content. You might have some guests, so the guest interaction. Your engagement. So I think that engagement segment's really important. Then your closing segment. So that could be like a bit of an overview of these are some of the options. And let's talk a bit about each one of them. So kind of what's important for the opening segment. Opening segment, I think within the first 10 seconds, we try and do it for Podfathers. We are very regimented with that. It's straight away, people need to know what this episode is about.
Yeah.
Don't tell me 3 minutes in, because I've just invested 3 minutes of my time. I know the title's going to say what it is, but straight away, we're talking about monetization. We're talking about distribution. We're talking about this. Tell your audience right up front what they're about to get, and tell them within the first 15 to 20 seconds.
That's your hook.
Precisely. And the hook is the most important thing. We've had it before where we create coming up segments. So straight away you get the highlights from the full episode, put it in the first 30 seconds. So as an audience member, I'm watching going, oh, I'm expecting this. But then you have to watch the entire thing to get the context for what they're saying. But none of that works without having the hook in the first place. Because if I'm not interested in that topic, I'd happily skip that and go to another one of your episodes. But if you made me wait 7 minutes to find out what this thing is about,
people won't.
They're not going to get that far anyway.
Yeah, they'll be gone.
So for me, the hook is important, and then going into providing value. And I think treat every single podcast as you have to provide value as early as possible. I say that, and we've kind of done a Q&A for this episode, but to me, I think that's value
valuable
as well. You're finding out more about us, the host that you're listening to as well. I think that is valuable. But providing that value and understanding you're going to get straight into the topic is crucial.
And I think what's really good with YouTube is that you can have your chapters.
Yeah, love
so
that.
YouTube with chapters, you might have like a Q&A chapter, and then you'll have like, okay, this is where we start talking about it. So people can actually skip through and find the bits that they want to as well. And I think making it easy for people to do that makes a massive difference to your attention through an episode.
Yeah, and the chapters only really work, again, if you've got everything planned out. Because if we're all over the place and our conversation deviates, you can't really create chapters because we're delving into different things. So for us, we try and create the prompt cards where we're talking about different segments. So you can easily have a chapter on distribution, one on editing, one on something else. So you can skip straight to it. So yeah, it's important to have these prompt cards and planning your entire episode. Catchy intro to grab attention. The first 10 seconds of any podcast, any show, anything is the most important. So for me, having the music in there, having the hook in there, having some sort of animated logo very quickly. What I hate is
20-second intro.
20-second intro of a logo reveal. Dude, nobody cares about your logo that much. For me, just a quick swish of a logo, some catchy music, go into the hook, and then go straight into providing value. And later down the line, if you want to kind of have a bit more fun with it, that's fine. I've seen other podcasts, but they've also switched it and it hasn't worked. Where they've provided, let's say, a conversation, a catch up for 20 minutes about their week, and then they go into the value of that episode. I'm like, no, just switch it around. Provide the value first and then talk about your week. Because people have got short attention spans. They want the information first. And then if you've built that personal brand, they care about how your week's gone, great, they'll carry on listening. But don't ever do it the other way around.
I love what you say about treating it like a TV show. Yes. And even sometimes when you think about the way that TV shows were formatted, like some of them have, especially the American ones, they have like a little bit of whatever's happening like in the show, then they'll have the jingle and then they'll go back into it. So they might have like a little joke at the beginning or a little like cliffhanger at the beginning, go into the jingle, which everybody loves anyway. Like if you think about Friends, you know, and then they go into the actual thing. So I think there's so much you can learn from that. Yeah,
and I don't know why, again, this is probably why having a producer for your podcast is so important. That's not us trying to big ourselves up, but having a producer essentially looks at it as a business. They're looking at it as, how would we format a TV show? What's worked for TV? Let's apply the same principles across to a podcast. Whereas if you go into doing your own podcast, you haven't really thought, you don't have that mentality. Hopefully this information is helpful and you can start thinking about it in that way. But if it's worked for TV for so long, do the same thing for a podcast. Create your segments, create your intro, create your catchy little cliffhanger at the beginning, have your strong hook. And then if you have that consistency as well, that's coming out every 2 weeks, people are looking forward to the next bit of value that you're going to provide. And it needs to be digestible as well. And that's why segmenting your episode is so important, because if it's all over the place, as an audience member, you walk away going, there's lots of information, but it's just coming at different directions. I don't know what I've taken away from this. So it's having that cohesive message all the way through.
Agreed. And the segmented topics is something that you think about in your kind of your main content is, okay, what is the chunk of what I want to be talking about and how do I break that down into digestible pieces, and then adding in like dynamic elements, you know, so interviews, or even like some people do monologues, which actually works quite well. There's loads of different things that you can do within that main chunk of what you're going to do. Yeah.
And that goes again to another episode we had on planning, because you create your topic, then your subtopics, you bullet point everything, and then you can keep that messaging and that conversation very structured. You can still deviate, you can still make it free-flowing, but it's very structured in terms of how you get that message across. The editing side is a bottleneck for a lot of people. So when we talk about having your logo reveal, having the music mastered properly as a catchy jingle, having B-roll added over the top and music throughout, that is a bottleneck for people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think people also go into podcasting not realizing how much editing there is to it as well. One of the other episodes we talk about AI within editing as well, which does do a lot of the work for you. And the other thing with formatting the show as it is when you cut reels, it's a lot more cohesive because you know the message you're getting across. You can cut a reel based on that, submit it to social media, and you're providing value with a reel and then driving people to your main episode as well, aren't you? So
it just helps to structure things so much, to have that plan and know, okay, these are the reels I'm going to make, or whatever you're going to be doing from it.
Yeah, I think one of the other important things as well is with visuals and multimedia, we talked about jingles and intro music, but actually think about how you can break up a conversation like this with B-roll, with visuals. Even with Podfathers, we're going to have the same thing where you're going to see B-roll popping up. So when we're talking about something, you'll have a visual cue that pops up. And I think that's important for attention spans and for people watching this, just to have that dynamic element thrown in. So we'll cut the camera to you, to me, a wide shot, then we'll have B-rolls. We've got music popping in at different times. I think, again, that's what you have on TV. You cut every 3 to 5 seconds, depending on the TV show. You should be doing the same thing for a podcast. And think about how you can achieve that from the very start. Plan all your multimedia. So we have a bank of, 10 music tracks, for example, that's licensed to Podfathers. We have B-roll specifically for Podfathers. So we can always dip into those folders and just use the same B-roll footage. So if you can do that at the start of your show, so if you have a podcast on boilers, for example, you collect all of your footage for that, all your multimedia, decide what's approved, and then throughout every single episode, you can use those tracks, you can use that. And then that's another way of creating that consistency as well with the branding.
I'm controversially a very lazy editor, to be very honest with you. I think for me personally, editing is a lot of friction. And so until I can outsource it, my edits are very basic. So I think what you're talking about is absolutely where people want to get to. I think I struggle because I'm also I'm not very good at editing. So for me, it's just I'm just focused on, okay, edit as minimally as possible for me personally so that I can get something out there. But that's not always going to be the best representation of your business. Yeah,
and again, if you're going to run a podcast for your business, we talk about monetization. These are podcasts for your business. This isn't personal projects. You are going to invest some time into creating that because it is a representation
of your business,
of your brand. So I think, if you can outsource the editing and say, these are music tracks we've got, this is B-roll footage, this is footage of our offices and people, staff, you can use this. Someone else can go in there and edit that for you. That's one of the benefits of coming into a studio environment because, again, they have that facility where they can film it, they can edit it, and potentially they can also distribute it on your behalf as well. That's also down to budgets. But if you're running a business, this is another marketing arm that you should really be investing in. And again, you can do the online Riverside stuff, but even that, you can take that, provide that to an editor with your music tracks, with your B-roll, and let them do their thing.
Great idea.
And it doesn't cost, again, that doesn't cost a huge amount of money. You can find a college student who loves editing, who enjoys editing for very minimal cost, and they'll sit there and enjoy actually putting that edit together for you and bring it to life.
Definitely.
A lot more companies need to outsource more things that they're not specialists in.
Because the amount of time it would take me to edit versus someone who's actually good at it, even just from a cost perspective, my time is worth X, their time is worth Y, they're going to be spending less time on it than I will, I can go and do other things for my business. So it's really important that people start to think about that. You can use stuff like Fiverr where you can get videos edited for $20, $30, $40, it's not crazy expensive.
It's not at all. And I think one of the other episodes, again, we talk about studio setup versus online. And there's drawbacks to both, there's positives to both. But something like a studio setup where, if you're going to try and set up all the audio kit, invest in the money for the decent camera, decent lighting in your own offices, it does cost a lot of money to do properly. It's also your time setting up or your colleagues' time setting everything up and the expertise and the knowledge you need to have to do it properly. Whereas you come into the studio, you turn up, you do your episode, you walk away, you've paid for that. But actually, the investment isn't that huge.
No.
And then there's a team here that will then edit it for you. And again, whether you use our studio or a completely different studio where you're located, it's a good way to invest money, I think, because it is a huge potential in your marketing and it's perceived value of your business because you're not taking shortcuts. You're providing value and it looks good, it sounds great.
When I do the analysis of it, it's actually more cost effective if you can go into a studio, because when you think it's all the hidden time cost that you don't really think about, the fact that someone's going to have to take time from doing your business activities to do this, like it actually just makes more sense if you can afford it to go to a podcast studio.
And even if you have got the time to do that, are you going to do it as well as going into a studio?
No.
Generally
This
not.
is what they do.
Because they are geared up for that. The lighting's already there, the audio equipment's there, and it's normally high quality. The camera equipment's there. So I think for me, again, having that consistency of you turn up, everything's done for you, you just deliver the message and walk away, all the editing's done. And that's the way you're going to churn out more and more episodes as well, because you haven't got a bottleneck. Even the pre-production, they help with. The editing, they help with. So you can churn out episodes a lot quicker. So that leads on to things like guest interactions. We have a whole episode on dealing with guests. How do you begin everything with your guests? So let's say it's online. Let's say you're on Riverside. You want to keep that consistency. What kind of advice would you have for that in terms of starting off the episode?
The way I generally do it is that I pre-record my intros for the guest.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, hey, this is Deren and this is who he does, because some people actually feel quite awkward when you're doing the intros. So I generally will just welcome them to the show, ask them the initial questions, but I've told them before, look, I'm going to do a different intro for you. You know, I'm going to go, hey, welcome to this episode. This week we've got Deren on, and this is who Deren is, and I record that after, based on the conversation that I have with them. And, you know, in this episode, you're going to find blah, 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 blah. And that's how I generally do mine, is that I want to get straight into it with the guest, get them comfortable, and we just start that way. So that's how I do mine.
So that's to save them from blushing, I suppose, because you've bigged them up.
Exactly.
So you can do that separately.
I do that separately. And it's a nice surprise for them later when they watch the episode and they're like, oh, that's what you said. It's really nice. But you can also do, depending on your format, you can also do it live with the guest, and maybe they introduce themselves. So you can do it different ways.
Yeah, and I guess if the guest is sitting down with you in a studio environment, it's a different vibe, isn't it? You don't generally pre-record that.
No.
You'd be having that conversation, introducing them on as well.
Exactly. So it depends on your format. A lot of this stuff really depends on your format. There are better ways to do it, but there's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do something.
It has to fit your podcast and the style of your podcast as well. And one of the other important things we try and train people up is asking open-ended questions. How important is that?
Yeah, that is like the most important thing that you can do, because people generally respond to what you ask them. So if you ask them a closed-ended question, unless they're very, very good at being a guest, they will give you a closed answer. You've not given them much room. So it's really important that you give people as much opportunity to answer questions as possible by giving them open questions.
Well, let's give an example. Tolu, do you like podcasting?
I love podcasting.
Okay. Tolu, what do you like about podcasting?
There are so many things I love about podcasting, and then I can go and list all of those things.
Exactly. So actually training yourself into asking open-ended questions is a critical component of being a good host.
Yeah.
Because you're opening the floor for your guests to just delve into what they want to provide. And that's how you're also going to extract a lot more value as well, isn't it?
Because even if you think about when you host someone at your house, the best hosts are going to give their guest options. You know, I've put on this for you and this for you and this for you. Like, you're going to feel like, oh, there's so many things I can enjoy. And it's the same thing with this. Like, you want to be giving them options of, okay, you can go this way, or you can go this way, you can go this way. You don't want them pigeonholed into one thing.
Again, depending on the format of your show, when we format shows for other clients, there's so many different elements you can bring into your episode to break things up. So you can have things like, I'm sure you've seen it, ick boxes.
Yeah, I love that.
Think like Room 101. So what's your ick in the industry? You'd write it down, you'd explain it, you put it in a box. It's just a nice visual cue to break up the entire presentation or the entire podcast. The other thing we have is spin the wheel. So you have, let's say, 14 segments. It could be 14 questions or 14 dares we've seen as well. Your guest would then spin it and then they would answer the question or they would do the dare. And that's just another fun element you can bring into your podcast to break it up and just have another segment in there.
One of the things I really liked from Diary of a CEO that they used to do is they had that big book. Do you remember they had like the diary or whatever it was? And the guest would write a question for the next guest.
Yes.
And they've never seen it before and then they have to answer it live. Like, that kind of interaction I thought was really nice as well.
Yeah, and you can completely think outside the box as well. It doesn't have to be ick boxes or spin the wheel. You can come up with another idea. We had a client who came up with an idea of creating a puzzle that the guest has to do. So they're in a technical space.
Okay.
So you get given maximum of 5 minutes.
Wow.
and they bring on people within that industry to undertake this challenge. It's a bit like they were thinking Top Gear with racing around the track. Who's the quickest? So this is who can solve that puzzle the quickest.
Really cool.
So from a technical point of view, that's really cool. And it brings people into that episode
then
going,
you've got a leaderboard, competition.
Precisely.
Love that.
And you start gamifying your episodes as well. So people go, I want to be on this episode because I bet I can do a better job. I bet I can do that quicker. So little things like that. So you can think outside the box, but also come up with those ideas prior to starting your podcast, because that will then direct how your podcast is going to go, because you want to do that from episode 1, not just introduce in episode 9 randomly. So I think that's really cool. And things like we've seen live polls and live questions, which is sometimes a bit more difficult. So you can use things like StreamYard, and you can get people firing questions in as the episode goes on. And then you can go, right, we've had a question from so-and-so, do you want to answer it? So it just brings a little bit of interactivity and also draws your audience in to get involved. Any other elements you can think of that you can add in or you've seen added in?
So Q&A.
Q&A is good,
Q&A is good. I think those are really, they open up really good discussion. So I think Q&A, and then like games like we've spoken about, or even like pop quizzes and stuff like that, I think could be really cool.
Yeah, and quick fire rounds as well are really good. We've had it where big CEOs have come in and they're used to sort of very formal interview questions. And then the host has gone, okay, well, let's find out what's your favourite animal. And suddenly they're like, okay. But because you don't see that CEO in that light generally, it's nice for the audiences to go, oh, cool, he likes this, because it gives you a point of reference when you do talk to them, going, oh, I didn't realise you went to Hawaii on your honeymoon, or you've done this, or you like this particular sports team. It's another way of connecting your guest with the audiences outside of the podcast itself.
What do people want to do for the close? So we've kind of talked about the introduction. We've talked about what happens in the core of the episode. What happens for the close?
Again, bear in mind these are to make money for your business. Have a call to action. Tell people what you want them to do. Do you want them to download something? Do you want them to call for a free consultation? Do you want them to submit questions for your next episode? So I think that's really important, to give a clear direction at the end of what you want people to do. So what else have you got? What else would you recommend people to do at the end? I
think if you already know what's going to be on the next episode, you can also give a bit of a teaser for that. So I think that's one of the things we did in some of the earlier episodes, where we'd said, okay, this is definitely going to be the next episode. This is what we're going to talk about. So if you know what that's going to be, then I think you can definitely do that as well. Yeah, and again, it depends on your format, because what we've also tried to do is going, well, we don't know what's going to be on the next episode because we need to be able to juggle these around as to what our audiences want. We knew, for example, monetization was going to be fairly early on, because we need to give you the importance of doing a podcast. But these later episodes, we kind of want to be able to mash them around based on what you guys have said you want next. So I think that's something also to think about is, do you want your podcast to be dated, if that makes sense? So some podcasts talk about current affairs or current events. Makes sense that they're dated. But I want someone, for some podcast, 5 years from now to be watching it or listening to it and still be able to get value from it. So if I've said, today in 2024 and blah, 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 like, you've dated your podcast pretty instantly. But actually, if it's a bit more of a timeless thing, then you might want to avoid some of those references and things like that will just let people know, okay, this is exactly when this was from. Yeah, and even if the industry moves on because there's new software that comes out you can discuss, you've still got value. Whereas if you open up with, this is September 2024, July 2024, whatever, by the time it goes 5 years, I've kind of switched off, because I'm like, there must be so many new things that happened. So you've already lost your audience at that point. And one of the key things that we tell people to do, every single client that we try and format shows for, ask people for the likes, the comments, the questions in, because why would you not? It takes 3 seconds. And you're basically saying, we value your likes, we value your subscriptions, and we want your comments as well. We want you involved in what we're trying to achieve as well. I've seen some really interesting stuff with, I think it's Modern Wisdom, Diary of a CEO. They're like, we have 3 million listeners, but only 30% of you are subscribed. So we need to get that number up, and they actually have data-based conversations about why it's important that more people subscribe and what that actually impacts and things like that. Because people often don't know that, actually my subscribe makes a difference. They might still be watching every week, but not be subscribed. So even having those kind of conversations, I think, works really well. Yeah, making it clear what value you're going to get from subscribing, the fact that you're going to be notified as soon as a new episode is out. We get some clients who are very shy about asking for things like that. They're like, it's a little bit cheesy. It's like, but you want your
audiences to watch. So why aren't you encouraging them to subscribe? Why aren't you asking for the likes and the comments and the interaction? So for me, when you close out, you should always be asking for that. So yeah, guys, like, subscribe, share, comment, email.
One of the things that I heard them say was that, look, the more people that subscribe, the bigger and better guests we can get. Because one of the first thing a guest is going to do is going to check. So I had one the other day. The guy was like, oh, how many plays do you get? What's your subscriber base? All that kind of stuff. So when you say, okay, I've got this many subscribers and that kind of stuff, it does give some of that social proof to people. And it does mean that actually the audience is going to get better quality guests.
Love that. Yeah, and it's true. Because if you aim for the big guests, they're going to go, okay, well, realistically, how many views am I going to get? Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. If you've only got 30 subscribers, you're not going to get a massive start within the industry coming on, generally. Because I think, well, my time's kind of valuable. I need to make sure that if I've got a key message to deliver,
it's going to many people as possible.
As many people as possible. So yeah, I think for us, that is absolutely key to close out on. And then having some sort of, people love having their logo reveal at the end as well. So something that swishes across your logo, closing music, video produced by whatever you want to put on there. It just gives that closure, doesn't it? And people know what to expect every single episode because you followed that same structure and that same format.
Yeah. And then we were going to talk a little bit about kind of theming things. So we can have either, whether it's like you can theme a season. So that's where seasons can sometimes work really well. If you want to have certain types of guests in a certain season, if you want to talk about certain topics in a season, then that works really well to kind of put them together. Or you can kind of do a theme within an episode as well. So that's what we do mostly, right? Is we do themed episodes. So we talk about a specific thing in a specific episode.
We don't mean theming as in having a Christmas tree at December. No. I mean, you can do if you
can do that.
But this is, creating a theme for every single episode so you know what the key overarching topic is and delivering on that theme. So it's just easy for people to follow and tune in on the episodes that are relevant to them, the information that they want. And then, story arcs. This goes back to the planning episode, doesn't it? Because if you can create a story arc for your entire series, as well as for each episode, honestly does not take a huge amount of time to do that. Because as a business owner, you know what key message you're trying to deliver. You know the overarching theme for the business and the key messages. Even if you've got guests on, you know what you're trying to get from those guests. So create those story arcs early on and try and follow that as well. So, and it also makes it easier to then create season 1, season 2, season 3 as well. You can break it down that way. And then in terms of guest diversity, it's not going to apply to everyone, is it, on this watching Podfathers? As in the type of guests that you have within an industry. So what we've had before, I'm going to use a wedding podcast. If you always have a cake maker on, a wedding cake maker, great, you've got 3 different perspectives, 5 different perspectives, but you need to be getting different guests on, a wedding photographer, a wedding venue planner, and you need to make sure that you cover your industry and get different perspectives. And I think that's the way to get fresh ideas as well.
I think that's applicable for everybody. You know, like whatever kind of podcast you do, whether it's diversity of gender, race, thought, like there's so many different ways that you can look at diversity, but you do want to have diversity because that's where you reach broader audiences because they can see someone or hear someone that looks like them, does something similar to them. So I think diversity is really important for whoever, like whatever podcast you're doing. It's important to have diversity of guests. You just don't want the same guest over and over again.
And actually, even age is a huge one. But you look at, as an example, when you were talking about that, I was thinking Stephen Bartlett on Dragon's Den. They've got quite, over 50s in terms of dragons. Suddenly they bring Stephen Bartlett. It's a fresh perspective. He's now bringing on a different audience of his own who are a younger generation.
Exactly.
Because prior to that, I think Dragon's Den was sort of going downhill. It was very repetitive.
It was.
And it's a fresh perspective.
And he fights with them. So that's always fun. It's like the whole Gen Z versus Boomer thing. Like, that's basically what it is, right?
Yeah, and that's what you want your podcast to be, is having these fresh perspectives where you can debate things, but from different angles. And so having different industry experts who aren't coming on saying the same thing every single week, because that will drag out.
It's boring.
It does get boring.
It's also not representative of life.
No, not at all.
You know, like you're going to meet lots of different people throughout life. So your podcast wants to represent that.
And don't be afraid to actually debate on certain things with guests. I don't mean have a fight with them, but you can debate because your audience... An agreeable debate, yes. I mean, we debate certain things. You have a certain style of, you do your podcasting that way, I'll do it this way. So again, we're trying to provide value of going, well, there are different ways of doing it. It's not, this is the correct way of doing things. There are different ways, but you need to practice and find your own feet within that. And you should treat your podcast series the same. If you're going to have guests, try and get different perspectives within your industry. And that's the way you're also going to provide more value to your audience as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what we mean with guest diversity is don't look at, otherwise you also become an echo chamber, which you definitely don't want to be as a podcast, because you're not actually entertaining or providing value to anyone at that point.
No.
So, and yeah, that goes down to expertise as well. So have people at different levels.
Yeah, that's really good.
Within the industry. It's not just the top CEO, because their perspective on the industry is going to be totally different to someone who's just starting out within that industry as well. And you want to make sure you get both sides, ideally.
Agreed. Because often by the time you're in that top position, you've kind of forgotten some of the stuff that you did to begin with. And it might have been so long that actually the stuff you did at the beginning isn't applicable to what people are trying to do now.
And it's not relatable either.
No.
And that's the other problem. Other people watching, well, that's not actually true right now. That was 10 years ago, maybe, when you're at this position.
Exactly.
Like you've just said. So you want to make sure that you're getting people in where they can give their perspective and get the top CEOs and get the middle managers as guests as well. But you want to make sure that you are hitting all of those perspectives and those fresh ideas as well. So we've touched on things like interactive elements.
Yeah, I really like the point here about feedback. So making sure that you're getting regular feedback from your audience, from people that watch. I think that's just really, really important. And one thing that I've noticed is that with LinkedIn, right? So you can broadly see who's liked your stuff and different things like that. And you can ask those people, okay, did you get a chance to watch? If you didn't get a chance to watch, why didn't you watch? You know, was there something that didn't intrigue you enough, or was this good? Like, that feedback is really, really important.
Yeah, and please don't take it as criticism where you go, oh, I'm going to quit the podcast. No. And again, we have to train our clients in the same way. Is if someone on YouTube is commenting on it, they could be trolls because I just comment on anything that's irrelevant, forget about it. Or the other thing is they are giving you genuine feedback. So if you are talking too much, not listening enough to your guests, or you're talking over them all the time, listen to that feedback and go, actually, they might be right. Maybe I'll try it a different way. So see it from their perspective and just see it as constructive criticism that you can action. And normally we thank them for that as well, because it's only going to help you improve.
And anybody that comments on your stuff is going to drive up your engagement anyway. So even if they leave a negative comment, thank you very much, because a comment's still a comment. YouTube doesn't care it's a negative comment. They go, oh, people are discussing this thing, push it out further. So for me, it's like, if you want to troll my stuff, thank you very much. Troll all day.
Yeah, you're helping the algorithm.
Exactly.
So you crack on there. And things like special segments. So we try and include this in some of our client podcasts as well. Anything that you've seen that you particularly like in terms of special segments?
I am a massive fan of behind the scenes. Yeah, massive fan.
I think everyone is.
Yeah, because it's so interesting. It's so interesting. So some of the stuff I love is when they do, like, they go with like basketball players, for example, and they like follow them around for a day and do behind the scenes of like, oh, this is what it actually takes to be that person. So I love behind the scenes. Massive fan. Yeah,
I think we can see it from our own social media. We put the final project, people love that. That's great. But then you put the BTS, like, oh, I didn't realize that's how you make it. And that's what goes into it.
Yeah.
So I think people just find that fascinating. It's just another perspective, isn't it, in terms of how things are developed.
Exactly.
So
I think we all have a blooper as well.
They're very popular.
Yeah.
We've got no bloopers on this show.
Of course not.
No, we're professionals.
Every time.
Yeah, watch out for the whole blooper episode coming out. And things that we've seen other clients do, things like expert segments. So they do showcases at the end of an episode. So again, it's not going to be relatable to every type of podcast. But for example, if you've got a makeup artist on your show talking about latest trends, the last 10 minutes could be an actual showcase demonstrating how to do makeup or a certain type of makeup. And you can capture all of that as well. So if there's a certain style, I know nothing about makeup, but I don't. And we've had that, and that works really well because it draws people in, just a different way of doing it. And the other good thing with that is it moves people away just from listening to the audio version to watching, because you only get value if you then go onto YouTube to then watch the full episode.
I like that.
So it's another way of drawing people in interactively. And again, people love showcasing their skill set. So rather than just talking about it on the podcast, show me. Yeah. If you're a magician, show me a magic trick.
And that's good content for them.
It's good content. Audiences love that sort of stuff. And also it's driving people to watch rather than just listen, because who wants to hear a magic trick?
No one.
you want to watch it. And I think I've got on here like expert tips, which also relates to showcasing your skill set as well. So that works really well. People love that.
I think something that's really important to consider as well is cross-promotion. So working with other podcasts, I think, is really, really important. Sometimes people see it as like competition, but I think you can think about it slightly differently, and actually everybody can grow together. Because there are going to be some people that are never going to watch your podcast, and it's okay to promote someone else's podcast to them. Like, that's actually really, really good, and actually puts you in a good place with that person. Because, I know I might not like, Podfathers, but they introduced me to this, so actually I like them a bit more now. So I think it's really important to collaborate.
But trying to climb to the top of a ladder on your own is bloody hard work. It really is. So if you treat everyone as competition, you are literally battling through life.
Yeah.
And I think if you can joint venture, if you can cross-promote, if you can help each other, you're both rising up that ladder anyway.
Yeah.
So you're tapping into their audience, they're tapping into yours. And I think as long as you can make it feel like a win-win environment, I think that's crucial.
So important. Yeah. That's so important.
I mean, even with our studio, for example, when we first started, a lot of the guys here were treating every other video producer as competition. And I was like, well, no, we could collaborate with them. They could rent the studio. We can send them out on shoots. They can send us out on shoots. So let's treat them as collaborators rather than competition. And that's worked great for us because they all use our studio. We're a central sort of hub for them as well. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. And again, if you're a beauty podcast, get other beauty podcasts in, get their perspective. Yeah, they're going to get more sales, but you're also going to be tapping into their audience. So why not?
There's also more than enough sales to go around.
Yes. And focus on just being good anyway.
Exactly.
And then you'll get the retention, and because of your personality, people will enjoy coming to you anyway. So I think don't treat everyone as competition, because you are literally shooting yourself in the foot. So cross promotion is important. We've also seen guest takeovers.
It's a great idea.
It is a great idea. It generally works really well as well if you plan it properly. So you'd have your guest actually just take over your entire episode. Have you seen much of that?
So one guy who used to work for me asked me to interview me on my own podcast.
Right, okay.
And that was very interesting. It was really good fun. Yeah, I like that kind of thing, the guest takeover.
Yeah, and it mixes up for the audience as well. They're kind of watching going, okay. And yeah, we've not seen it a huge amount of times, probably 4 or 5 times in the studio, but it's just really refreshing.
Yes.
And if you plan it properly and your guest is comfortable doing that,
it could be really, really good.
Could be awesome.
Yeah.
And again, it's the sort of thing that you just try, because unless you try it, you don't know how people are going to react.
Yeah.
And you take on that criticism, you take on that feedback, and you either do it again or you never do it again.
I like the idea personally.
I do. Technical considerations I've got on my list.
Okay.
What would you want to discuss within that? So in terms of formatting your show, is there anything that's really crucial?
I think it's just about your technology, your equipment, enabling all those things that you want to do. So making sure you have the right equipment that's fit for purpose to be able to do all the things that we've spoken about. You don't want your equipment to be a hindrance. You just want it to work and do the right thing and enhance what you're doing.
Yeah. And I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this because we have an entire episode talking about the equipment. We've got a masterclass on lighting, everything else. So you can watch those. But like you've just said, I think it's just important to have the right equipment and not take shortcuts. And if you've got the right equipment, also the knowledge to use the equipment.
Yeah. Not all the gear and no idea.
Precisely. Other thing I want to add that's on my list is thinking about captions and subtitles.
Interesting.
You can't have reels, guys, without captions.
Oh, definitely not.
People watch whilst in bed, on the toilet. They watch in silence. I think I read somewhere 85% of reels are watched in silence.
Yeah.
So if you don't have captions, no one has a clue what you're saying anyway.
Yeah. So captions are so important. I think for full episodes, I don't really put captions.
No, you've also got things like YouTube embed. So if people want captions, you can click on the button. It automatically does it.
Yeah.
It's 90% okay. There's a lot of
That's part
errors.
of the reason I don't do my own captions, because it always spells my name wrong. So I have to go through every single bit, change all the bits. In a reel, it's fine because it's 15 seconds. But for a half hour to an hour podcast,
that's 3 hours of editing, of changing spelling errors.
So I don't actually do captions on the big videos, but always on a reel. No,
on the full episode, we've had a few clients who've asked and paid for us to edit captions in because they're in certain industries where accessibility is an issue. So we're happy to do that. So that's not a problem.
That's a really good point.
But generally, I'm talking about 90% of people watching this, you don't need to go to that much effort. If people want captions, they can click the CC button on YouTube. Captions are automated anyway. But for reels, don't even bother putting them out without captions. Just you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah.
And there's apps out there. You've got CapCut, you've got Captions app, you've got other things that you can use. They're not perfect compared to just getting an editor.
But it takes the bulk of the work.
Exactly. If you're trying to remove bottlenecks and friction and have something that's seamless, you can use apps that are already out there. They don't cost 100%. A lot of money either.
100%.
It doesn't compare to having an editor sit through and do everything for you, but then it doesn't also have the cost implications.
It's that happy medium sometimes that you got to find.
you have to find, absolutely. So for me, those are important. And recently, we haven't done it for a long time, but we've had people ask about multilingual options.
Okay.
I don't know how I feel about it because we're not really geared up for it, to be completely honest. But I can see from their point of view, you can create a podcast and then you can have it dubbed over in different languages. So if you want to invest because your company is international,
it's a great option.
It's not a hugely costly option. So we've had to hire an external experts who can dub in Spanish, dub in Japanese, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Because they've got headquarters in both and somewhere in South America. It costs a lot of money. But again, if you're going to tap into those demographics, then why would you not spend that money? You've created the content. So having the editing and the dubbing and everything else over the top isn't a huge investment if you're now tapping into that demographic.
I think AI is also going to massively help that as well. So I've already seen some stuff where it could, if I go to a certain place, they'll map my voice, and then just reproduce me in Spanish, reproduce me in French, reproduce me in German. Like, AI is getting to that place as well where that will also be able to come in, change my mouth movements to look like I'm talking in Spanish. I think that's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. We're not actually here, guys. This is all yeah, huge limitations in my opinion. I'm a big fan of certain parts of AI, but we've seen sort of the presenter AI stuff where you watch it and go, you can't put that out as a business. It's not professional. It's a massive shortcut. It doesn't look real. And I don't think audiences appreciate that. But the way it's exponentially growing, that's just happened in the last couple of years.
We're in like version 0.0. Like, we're not even in version 1 yet, I don't think, really.
Precisely. So within 3-4 years, what you've just said, you'll watch it. We won't actually be sitting here. No. We'll be in Hawaii somewhere. So, yeah, I think multilingual option is going to be important for some people watching this podcast, but I wouldn't treat it as essential. If you've got a local demographic, let's say you're a beauty salon, you're doing a podcast, you don't need it subtitled. You don't need multilingual in Japanese, etc. I don't believe, unless that is specifically your demographic. But that is an option for you to consider. It's stuff out there for you to do.
I think you can also think about it a slightly different way. Let's say you're somebody who's come from Russia, who lives in Wokingham, has a salon, you're most comfortable speaking in Russian. Maybe dubbing it into English, for example, could be really helpful for you to access more people in your local area. So I think it can also work both ways.
I haven't thought about that. That's a great idea. So again, take this as advice we're giving you that is out there, things for you to consider, and then implement what you think is relevant to you and what works for you. And from my point of view, I think we've covered a lot in this episode, haven't we?
Yeah. So what's your summary for this episode?
I think taking the time to format your episode and your series is crucial. I think thinking about guest diversity in age, ethnicity, fresh perspectives, different steps on the industry ladder that they're on is absolutely crucial. And I think accessibility is a huge thing as well. I think we touched on multilingual options, captions, subtitling. I think that they're essential. I want to get your take on what you think, how you would summarize this episode.
I think there's not too much different than I would say than what you said. I think that thinking through your format is really important. We also did talk about how you interact with your guests and how you engage your guests, making them feel comfortable, asking them the right questions or good questions. And then, I think reels, like put your captions on your reels. It's really, really important. And then also we did speak about your visual brand identity as well. So making sure that you've got the right bits in the background, that you've taken some care over your background, I think is really important too.
Yeah, and I've missed that one, but I'd 100% go with that as well. So in terms of creating your scene of what's going to be on camera is so essential, but does not take a huge amount of time, does not take a huge amount of cost. So getting a Calax unit, putting some props in there that are relevant to your podcast. So if it's a sports podcast, have some trophies, have a basketball, have a football. It doesn't take a lot of time to do that. Rather than having just a blank white wall, no branding, and no different to a lot of other podcasts out there. So I think it doesn't take a huge amount of time. 100% think about what's going to be on camera, what your audience is going to see is absolutely crucial. So what would we like our audience to do for us? Like, subscribe, follow, all the above. Share with anyone who else might be interested in podcasting. Comment, give us your feedback as well. So if there's anything you don't like, you want us to, or anything you want us to ask and cover in future episodes is important to us. Send us an email. Go onto the website and download free resources as starter packs on how to start a podcast as well. So download all that information and we will see you on the next episode. See you next time.